Did you tell yourself yesterday you'd start today? And the day before that? You're not undisciplined. You're just waiting on a feeling that doesn't arrive on schedule. In the next half hour, I'm going to give you 5 specific things Marcus Aurelius did on the days he didn't want to. 5 moves, not moods. Every one of them built to run while the reluctance is still sitting in your chest. The 4th sounds like a cop-out until you see what the research did to it. And the 5th will cost you something you're attached to. Start with where the notebook was written, because the setting does most of the persuading. Not a study, not a marble room with a fire going. The Danube frontier in the 170s, during a war he had not asked for and did not want. 2 of the 12 short books still carry their location headings, one written among the Quadi on the River Gran, one at Carnuntum, a garrison town on a cold border. The Antonine Plague was moving through the empire. He had buried children. His own letters to his old tutor Fronto complain, between descriptions of perfectly ordinary days, about sore throats and sleeplessness and a stomach that wouldn't settle. He wrote in Greek, by lamp and a tent, and the title later attached to the work translates roughly as, to himself. There is no audience. Nobody is being impressed.
No publisher, no student, no posterity, and that changes how you should read every line in it. Because it means each entry is one of 2 things. Either it's something that worked, or it's something he needed to hear again. And the repetition tells you which. The same reminders circle back, book after book, about impatience, about difficult people, about the sheer weight of getting out of bed. A man who had solved his reluctance would have written the solution down once. Marcus wrote it down for years. Which makes this document something other than what it's usually sold as. It isn't a victory speech delivered from the summit. It's a maintenance manual, written mid-climb, by a man taking notes for the version of himself who would want to quit tomorrow morning. And the way he begins that manual tells you what kind of man was holding the pen. Before a single rule, before one principle, Book 1 is a list of people and what he took from each of them. His grandfather for temper and self-control, his mother for the way she lived, his teacher Rusticus, who lent him his own copy of Epictetus's lectures. Before the emperor gives himself one order, he takes an inventory of borrowed character. He starts by counting what he was given, the way a man checks his supplies before a long march. A maintenance manual has one great advantage over a victory speech. Everything in it has to work in bad conditions. So stop treating motivation as the entry ticket. Motivation is usually the residue action leaves behind. All 5 of these moves execute at 0 motivation, which is the only state in which you'd ever actually need them. The first thing he did was concede the feeling out loud before overruling it. His most quoted entry, near the start of the 5th book, is a pre-dawn argument with himself about staying in bed. The discipline is not the interesting part. What matters is that he gives the opposition its point first. He doesn't pretend the blankets are uncomfortable or that some nobler part of him secretly wants to be up at that hour. He grants it. Yes, this is pleasant. Then he asks the one question the pleasantness can't answer, whether he was assembled for this, to lie warm under wool while the ants and the spiders and the bees are already out working. The concession is the technique. The question is only the lever. Picture 2 people, same alarm at 5:40 in the morning, same dark room, the radiator not on yet. The first says nothing. He negotiates silently, in the dark, with a voice that has all the good lines. I'm not even that tired, I could go later, the weather's bad anyway, and 40 minutes disappear. A feeling you refuse to name argues in the dark, and it always wins on points, because you never made it stand where you could see it. The second person says one flat sentence into an empty room. I do not want to do this, and I'm going. Feet on the floor in 9 seconds. Psychologists call the underlying mechanism affect labeling. Lieberman and colleagues found that simply putting a feeling into words dampens the amygdala's response. Naming it turns the volume down in a way that arguing with it does not. James Gross's work comes at the same thing from the other side. Expressive suppression, clamping down on the face and the voice, does not reduce what you actually feel, and it raises the body's stress response while you do it. Daniel Wegner's white bear experiments gave us the crude mechanical version. The harder you push a thought under, the more often it comes back. So name the reluctance in one flat sentence before you move. Then join the two halves with the word and, never with the word but. I don't want to, and I'm starting. But opens a debate. And is just a schedule. The second thing he did is a matter of grammar. After the opening book, Meditations stops sounding like a diary. The entries are addressed to you, an emperor issuing instructions to himself as though to a junior officer standing at attention. Consider what that actually looked like.
The most powerful man alive, with secretaries who could take dictation on anything at any hour, writing lines that would never be filed, addressed to a man already sitting in the room. Not, I'm dreading the Senate today. Something closer to, you will meet resistance today, and you know what you owe. He is manufacturing a second person to be spoken to, because the first person had stopped listening some time ago. A woman sits in a parking garage for 4 minutes before walking into a conversation she has postponed twice. She doesn't sit there gathering courage. She opens the Notes app on her phone and types, addressing herself by name. Priya, you already know he'll get defensive in the first 90 seconds. One sentence is the whole job today. Say it in the first 2 minutes or you won't say it at all. 4 lines. Then she goes in and says it. Ethan Kross's research on self-talk found that people who address themselves as you or by name rather than as I show less distress and better performance under social pressure. The pronoun manufactures distance, and distance is where judgment lives. Kross and Igor Grossman also documented what they named Solomon's paradox. We reason more wisely about other people's problems than about our own, and we do it reliably. Writing to yourself in the second person smuggles your own problem into the category you're already good at. Pennebaker's expressive writing paradigm used a smaller dose than you would expect, around 15 minutes a day for 3 or 4 consecutive days, and measured what had changed months later. Give it 90 seconds, 3 to 5 sentences, addressed to yourself by name, and every one of them an instruction rather than a report on how you feel. You are both the officer and the order, which is fine on a morning when nothing has gone wrong yet, but mornings like that are rare, and Marcus knew it. The third thing he did was brief himself on the friction before it arrived. There's an entry near the start of the second book where he opens the day by listing in advance exactly who is going to be difficult: the meddler, the ingrate, the arrogant one, the liar, the envious, the sour. If it stopped there, it would just be pessimism with good branding. It doesn't stop there. The second half is where the work happens. He reminds himself these people act this way because they can't tell what's genuinely good from what isn't, that they're the same species as he is, and that therefore not one of them can actually damage him or drag him into becoming like them. He's doing something more specific than bracing for impact. At 6 in the morning, he decides what a 3 o'clock insult will be permitted to mean. The modern version is deliberately unglamorous. A shift supervisor writes 3 lines on the back of a receipt before he clocks in. Friction 1. The ordering system will be down again, and if it's down, he does the manual count first instead of standing there refreshing the screen. Friction 2. Danny will be short with him, and if Danny's short, he answers the question that was asked and nothing else. Friction 3. The 340 crash, and if he's crashing, he does the restock, not the emails. He has not prevented a single one of those three things. What he stopped paying is the surcharge, the 20 minutes of irritation, the small collapse of the afternoon. Two lines of research meet here. Gabriella Ettingen's work on mental contrasting shows that pairing a wanted outcome with a clear-eyed look at the obstacle beats visualizing success on its own, but it only converts into behavior when a plan is attached. Peter Gallwitzer's implementation intentions are that plan, and the format is unremarkable to look at. If situation X, then I do Y. Across roughly 100 studies, the if-then substantially outperforms the goal stated on its own. The emotional half needs no citation. The same obstacle costs more as a surprise than it does as an appointment. Write 3 frictions and 3 if-thens before the day starts. 60 seconds of pre-deciding, so the choice isn't made by the version of you who is already annoyed.
The fourth is the one that sounds like a cop-out, right up until you see what the clinical research did to it. When the whole of it felt unliftable, Marcus refused to lift the whole of it. There's an entry in the 8th book where he tells himself not to let the imagination pile the entire future onto him at once, not to total up everything that might go wrong across all of it, but to ask of the present piece only. Is this piece, the one in front of him, unbearable? Is it beyond his strength? The answer is almost always no, and that no is the only fuel the next hour requires. He pairs it elsewhere with a line written at his own expense. You could be good today, and instead you keep choosing tomorrow. A man is 60,000 words from finishing a dissertation and has spent 3 weeks not writing it. Not out of laziness, he thinks about it constantly, which is part of the problem. The target in his head is the dissertation, all of it, so he changes the target. The new goal is to open the file and read the last paragraph he wrote. That's all. He's allowed to close it afterward with no penalty. He opens it 11 days running. On 4 of those days, he closes it after 90 seconds. On the other 7, he writes. That's the whole trick, and it's worth being precise about why it works. The resistance lives at the entrance, not in the room.
Which is where the clinical work comes in, because this has been tested as a treatment. In a well-known component analysis, Jacobson and colleagues took cognitive therapy for depression apart to see which pieces were doing the lifting. The behavioral activation component alone, scheduling and doing small activities regardless of how you felt about them, performed as well as the full package. Mood follows behavior, at least as reliably as behavior follows mood. Motivation, very often, is downstream. So define the smallest countable unit of the thing. 1 paragraph, 1 set, 1 phone call, 1 open file. Make it embarrassingly small, because the objective is contact, not volume. Keep the standard, shrink the doorway. The 5th will cost you the most, because it takes away a punishment you're attached to. Marcus fails constantly in this book. He says so, in his own hand, repeatedly. And his instruction to himself when it happens is gentler than the reputation predicts. Don't be disgusted with yourself. Don't lose heart. Don't sulk about it. Come back to the principle. In the 9th entry of the 5th book, he warns himself specifically against approaching philosophy the way a scolded schoolboy approaches the schoolmaster, with resentment and one eye on the door. He reaches for a medical image from his own century to make the point.
A man with sore and flamed eyes doesn't stand there lecturing himself about how he should have rested them sooner. He reaches for the sponge and the egg, the remedy, not the reprimand. Notice what that rules out: the entire ritual of self-punishment that most of us have quietly mistaken for discipline. 2 people miss the same Tuesday. Person A treats the miss as evidence. The streak is broken, so the system is broken. So the honest thing is to begin again properly on the 1st of the month. She has started over 4 times this year and has trained in total about 11 weeks. Person B treats Tuesday as Tuesday. Thursday is a scheduled session, so Thursday happens. Person B has never started over in her life, and it isn't because she never misses. She has simply never once counted a miss as a break.
Over a year, that's 140 sessions against 40. The difference in willpower between these two women is approximately 0. The entire difference sits in what a missed Tuesday was allowed to mean. Breens and Chen found that self-compassion after a failure increased people's motivation to improve, which reverses the folk theory that you need contempt to keep yourself in line. And relapse prevention research going back to Marlatt named the real killer decades ago, the abstinence violation effect.
People collapse at the moment they read the lapse as proof of a permanent defect. So abolish restart dates. There is no beginning again, because nothing ended. There was a gap. Resume at the next scheduled slot and forbid yourself the word again as a verdict. Those are the 5. Run them in the order the day hands them to you. They're shaped like a day and they're cheaper than you think. 6:40 in the morning. The phone is face down on the floor where you left it. The room is still dark. The reluctance arrives on time, and you spend 60 seconds naming it out loud before your feet touch. 6:45. 90 seconds writing to yourself, by name, in the second person, about what today actually requires. 6:47, 3 frictions, 3 if-thens on the back of an envelope. 9 o'clock, the large thing looms and gets cut down to its smallest countable unit. Open the file, make the call, 1 set. 2 in the afternoon, it falls apart anyway, and the only permitted move is to resume at the next slot without the ceremony of self-loathing. Total cost, across an entire day, under 12 minutes. Not one of those 5 asks you to feel differently first. That's their share property, and it's the reason they survive contact with a bad Tuesday. Marcus wasn't building willpower in that tent. He was steadily reducing the number of decisions his reluctance was allowed to vote on.
Which brings me back to what I promised you at the start. 5 things he did on the days he didn't want to. And there's a part of it I've been holding back. He never got past this. The reason Meditations repeats itself so much, the same reminders about impatience, about difficult people, about getting out of bed, circling back book after book for 12 books, is that there was no far side for him to reach. He was writing that pre-dawn argument to a man who had already read it, possibly several times. And if the most powerful person in the Western world needed the getting out of bed argument in writing more than once, then the story you've been telling yourself, that disciplined people simply feel differently in the morning, isn't a description of reality. It's a permission slip. So run the 5 in order on the days you least want to, and judge them by one measure only, whether you moved, not whether you felt better. Feeling better is a side effect. It shows up late, and it cannot be relied on for timing. We still have this book because he kept losing to himself, in a tent, on a frozen border, in a war he didn't choose, and kept writing it down anyway. The record of someone who never finished is worth more to you tonight than the testimony of someone who did. So think again about yesterday, when you told yourself you'd start today. That promise put you in company.
A man on a river frontier in a different century reached for the same sentence you reached for, and then got up anyway most mornings, not because the morning improved, but because he had 5 things he could do while it was still cold and still dark, and he still didn't want to. Don't try to run all 5 tomorrow. Take the one that stung most, and do it once, quietly, without telling anyone. If this is the voice you want in your ear on the days you don't want to, this is what gets published here every week. Stay a while. There's another one waiting.